has our memory been wiped by dark forces? When you're born into this world, do you remember a supposed past life of yours? Some people apparently do. There have been news articles about this. They're actually pretty interesting to read, where children remember apparently what happened to them in a previous lifetime and how they passed away. And then they would verify these details they shared and discovered that what the child was saying did actually occur on this planet. And usually it was a child of an age where they came to the conclusion there's no logical reason why they would know about these events at that age. So that's an interesting phenomena where apparently memory is intact of a past life. But now there's another issue on this planet. Many people have started to notice, if they look into this, that having zero memory about your past life could indeed be because of some dark influence, some satanic, demonic, whatever you want to call, influence on the soul, making it forget anything that occurred to it before it entered this body. So in this video I wanted to share 3 concepts, and one of them I consider the most logical, and the others, well, it's up to you to decide which one you find most logical. So the first proposition is that when you reincarnate, your memory is simply temporarily hidden from your own awareness. So you're having this life, and this awareness of a past life is simply hidden, obscured from view, so to speak, so you don't really remember it as you live this current incarnation. We can conclude something like, well, that is so that we can more effectively live this physical life of ours. Because it might be pretty complicated and weird to remember all the past lives you may have lived as you're trying to live your current life. Imagine remembering your past family, lovers, children. Maybe you were all kinds of different genders throughout those lifetimes, supposedly, right? Men, women. Perhaps you were animals as well. I mean, it would become a complete chaotic mess if you think about it. So from that we come to the conclusion, well, it's probably obscured so that we can live this life. It seems to make sense, right? And that is what many people in spiritual circles say, that is the case. And you know, it may be true. It could very well be the case that is just what's happened. Now, another proposition that is more sinister is that your memory has been wiped. So this is a group of people that consider the opportunity, I wanted to say, but it's not really an opportunity. They consider the situation that before you were reincarnated into this current life, that your memory had been wiped, so that you can live this life and not know the truth of who you are, where you came from, where you would go after death. So you constantly live in total ignorance, and in a way also in total fear, and a total conflict with this world, with yourself, not knowing pretty much the things that you feel you should know. You just can't recall them. So basically that is a very dark view, and it's also a very popular one, where the idea is that this whole world is like a soul trap. Now there is some truth to the soul trap theory that I've spoken about a year ago, I think. Even to this day, to a certain extent, I agree with it. I agree with it from this point of view that the brain and body keep consciousness locked into this 3-dimensional space. Because of that, we cannot easily perceive beyond it, and therefore it can feel like a soul trap, like you're trapped here, physically speaking, from the broader picture. You can't see it. But this memory wipe idea is that malicious forces have wiped our memory so that we don't remember our divine nature, and we can be a good slave, so to speak, to physicality. We can live our life like pretty much like a slave without realizing it for these demonic, malicious forces that are non-physical in nature, that are operating from different dimensions. Could this be the case? It could very well be the case. Because again, if you think about it, who knows? Just like the first proposition, this one could also be the truth. But at the same time, I feel like this second proposition is more fear-based as well, because it also seems to suggest that there are powers, malicious forces that are way stronger than us, and so we have to be mindful and careful and have to break free. It can very rapidly slide into the direction of fear, of some sort of fear and feeling worried and confused. And how do I get free then? If there's these malicious forces trying to keep us stuck here, how do I get free? And before you know it, you kind of operate on a frequency of fear, and that's the last thing you ever want to do. You actually never want to do it, but it happens to all of us at times. But we want to stay away from the frequency of fear. So to me, the second proposition is more fear-based, even though at the same time it can seem logical in a way as well. See, because another part of this proposition has also been that if life is like a school, then, and we have all these different physical lifetimes of ours to supposedly learn, why is our memory wiped? Because having your memory wiped, you cannot learn properly, right? How can you learn something if your memory about the event has been wiped? It's like Groundhog Day in a way. You can't really effectively learn with your memory lost in that regard. So that makes sense in a way if you think about it. That perhaps this is all due to malicious forces. Now I want to give you the third proposition, and it's one that I have been contemplating a lot as of late, and that I have not really heard on many YouTube videos or in general at all. I don't think I've heard anyone ever talk about this, but I'm sure they are out there. I think that's the best way to put this. So these first two propositions, I've heard others talk about it all over YouTube and in general online. But this third one I wanted to share with you right now is some that I concluded for myself. And that is that there's no memory wipe. It's not so much a matter of a memory wipe. If we approach our existence from a multidimensional space, then it is more a matter of currently, physically speaking, your consciousness is locked into a certain frequency. On this frequency of physicality, through which you're experiencing this journey through this body with the five senses, certain memories are not available to your consciousness. But if you were to step out of your body through astral projection and go into higher frequencies, as the frequency changes, as your consciousness changes the frequency, your ability to perceive certain memories also changes around. Then you suddenly can remember and perceive broader pictures about yourself. Then you can perceive your infinite nature, your multidimensional nature. And you realize it's not so much a matter of your memory being wiped. It's just that your memory is on a different frequency. So this is still perhaps a little bit similar to the first proposition where your memory has just been obscured. But that's still kind of not addressing this possibility of making it clear to ourselves. Now, can we make past life memories clear to ourselves? Yes, we could. But it's not really going to be in the manner as we probably assume it would be, where we're like, oh, I lived this life, I was over there, I was doing this and that. Instead, you'll discover through multidimensional exploration simply the elements that you learned are still part of you from supposed past lives, and the actual events of those lives, they're not really what matters. What matters is knowing that you're a multidimensional being who can decide at its own decision where it will exist. Physically or non-dimensionally, astrally, in different dimensions. So right now we have decided to exist physically as well, even though we cannot physically seem to remember it. But that it makes total perfect sense, because right now we are operating through what we call mind. See, we are eternal, infinite consciousness, but we operate through something called the mind. And the mind is part of this physical existence which has been programmed. You see, for most people this one is a tricky one to grasp, even for me, to fully grasp this part. The difference between mind and consciousness is that consciousness is eternal and free. It is awareness. It is simply awareness and capable of being aware of whatever it wants to be aware of. But mind specifically has been programmed by your upbringing and society and has all these supposed beliefs about itself, and because that is sort of in between the eternal consciousness, and then you have the mind, and then you have the body. Our senses are forcing us to look outwardly through this physical body, and then we use mostly the mind to make sense of it all. So we use this programmed aspect of consciousness in order to grasp physicality. But it's like a programmed part of it all. If you go beyond the mind into pure consciousness, then you're capable of knowing anything, everything. You see, that's also where the Akashic records exist. I don't know if you've heard of that, but that's like a spiritual, energetic memory field of everything that has ever occurred on planet Earth in anybody's lives. You can gain access to all of it, and through it you also understand your unity with all of creation, that all the lives that have been lived is like you have been living all those lives all along. So the idea of old and young souls is also still a little silly to me. I think what we could conclude is that if in a past life you were an animal and then suddenly incarnate as a human being, the odds of you acting very animalistic and kind of like a madman, like very wildly based on your emotions and instincts and survival, as happens to many humans, is because of that. It's because perhaps they were animal in a past life, now they're human, they still have to learn through multiple other occasions as they go through these experiences how to actually control this energy field of being a human being properly instead of animalistically. Who knows, man? There's many mysteries to all of this. But I don't think our memory has been wiped, because energy fields exist that contain all memories, that contain all the information of all from the beginning of time, but they're just on different frequencies. So it is not so much that our memory has been wiped by malicious beings, I would say. It's just that it's on a different frequency, and as long as we are stuck with our consciousness in the mind of our current incarnation, well, then things get very tricky and difficult to perceive. Then we get very confused and wonder what has happened. We start to come to all kinds of conclusions about malicious beings trying to hold us down. But the problem with this theory of supposed dark forces wiping your memory, forcing you to reincarnate, to never be free, is that in all of that you're saying that these beings have a power over you, which then would mean that you are not as strong as you really are, as you truly are. You're denying your true strength, the strength of freedom. If you're free, then they can't do anything to you. How do you become free? By identifying yourself with source consciousness, with the true nature of consciousness, which is always free to do whatever it wants. It is the mind that has been programmed to believe that others and things have power over us. It's that same mind that has to collapse so that that free eternal consciousness can shine through. And it is in that eternal nature of your own consciousness that all memory exists, even of past lives. Therefore, it has not been wiped by malicious beings. It is just on a different frequency, and the more you see yourself as a multi-dimensional being, the more you're capable, the more you'll become capable and hopefully curious as to explore different frequencies within your own very being, and then you can confirm all these things for yourself. That is what I had to say about these three propositions for this video.